African-American culture and found more success in that field than their African-American counterparts, but both made major contributions.
Thank you.
Hi, Warren. Thank you for coming tonight. While I've been sitting here watching these clips, I've kind of been racking my brain to think about well, what are some other examples of movies or TV shows or TV episodes that have tackled the question or the issue of Black-Jewish relations, and I've realized that there are very few. I can't think of that many other than what we saw right now. I mean, there's a lot about, Black-white relations. There's a lot about, just the history of the Jewish community and things that they've gone through. But I can't think of that many movies and TV shows about this specific subject, which has always been a subject that's fascinated me. So I guess my question is, why do you think that is?
That there aren't more.
Right.
It's hard to say. I think you, in some ways, maybe hit the nail on the head that I think in our country, again, Black-white relations are often what has taken the focus. But there are things actually more recently, again, I would say in the last 10, 20 years that we've seen contemporaneous with Fires in the Mirror and Liberty Heights. I mean, we have things like Tony Kushner's musical, Caroline or Change, about his own Jewish family and growing up and his relationship with their black maid. That, of course, was Driving Miss Daisy, which is huge, 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 both on stage and on screen. But there were things even earlier on, albeit with a little bit of a switch. Back in, I think it's the 40s, Arthur Lawrence play Home of the Brave, which is about, it's actually about anti-Semitism in the army in World War II. That's the stage play. When it transfers, though, to the screen, it becomes about racism, and the Jewish character becomes black. So it's interesting that there are different ways in which this topic has been sort of teased out in pop culture.
Hi, Warren. The segment on slavery, I guess it was quoting Farrakhan, talks about slavery as a violent institution, but some of the subtleties of slavery was the breakup of the family, that was horrible, and the prohibition against teaching slaves how to read and write, and we've had a lasting effect from that. But that segment really didn't emphasize that. It just talked about the violence of slavery.
You're right. I mean, there were so many horrific and detrimental effects that slavery had on the black population here in the U.S. And my sense is that, in part for rhetoric's sake, he's emphasizing the most graphic things to really make his point about why slavery for him was uniquely terrible and really, the worst tragedy. So my sense is that, part of it, it's more graphic or compelling, one might say, to sadly have to mention these really disturbing images and atrocities rather than talking about, the inability to teach blacks how to read, as terrible as that is as well. And I think that's why those decisions were made by him.
Hi, Warren. We've seen a lot of clips where there's been a lot of animosity between blacks and Jews, and the argument has also been one of one-upping each other on the issue of slavery. And to me, that seems like a very tragic thing. And so my question is there any instance that you can think of where these two groups have actually found empathy in one another?
Yes, I mean, there are moments, we didn't get to see clips from Driving Miss Daisy tonight, but there are some very key moments in that film and in that play where Miss Daisy, the Jewish woman, and Hoke, her black chauffeur, they learn to bond over the course of the film. And there's this moment in which the synagogue has been bombed, and she's very upset about it. And he tells her this story about a lynching that happened in his own life as a way to sort of show that there are very sort of parallel experiences. And it's hard for her to understand it. She says, why are you telling me this? But deep down, that she sees that they are related. And so I think that would be an example of that.
One of the recurring themes that we've seen in all the clips is assimilation. I think that's most prevalent in The Jazz Singer. You see the battle between holding on to his roots and then becoming a part of wider culture. I'm curious as to how film has been used to perhaps not assimilate better, but to actually change culture at large to come closer to the two minority groups that are being explored?
Well, film is definitely a way that I think we can experience the other, shall we say, right? It's a way to maybe get to see traditions or experiences of people who we may or may not get to maybe either meet in our everyday lives or learn something more about them. So I think that's one of the reasons I think many of us go to film or to the movies, which is that we want to learn about other people. And I think that's what makes the films that we've seen tonight so compelling, because I think we get to sort of get a window into these very moving experiences.
I wanted to ask about casting in Hollywood films, in particular, non-African American actors being cast as African American and non-Jewish actors being cast as Jewish characters.
Well, there's a lot of issues on the table here. I mean, one of them is this whole issue about passing. What does it mean? In Shobo, it's an example of in which you have an individual, Julia, of mixed heritage, and she passes as white. And so that's something that, that's one sort of, I think, example. I mean, if anything, I think the ability for casting either against the grain or with people of different race or ethnicity, I think it causes us to question what really is race or ethnicity. Is it something more than skin color? What makes someone a certain category, right? And I think for me, at least, it calls all those categories into question, because if anyone can play that role, what makes something authentic? So I think that's something that we can, I think that's one way that we can look at that question.
Hi, Warren. I wonder if you could comment on the impact that some of these films have had on the larger community in understanding the struggles that Blacks and Jews have struggled with individually, separate, and together as two groups.
I think a lot of people, regardless of their background, often forget different parts of history. And I know that whenever I screen The Jazz Singer, many people are still rightly very shocked by watching that blackface sequence and not really remembering that this is something that actually happened. And so I think the power of these films is reminding us of what that history was. Same for something like Liberty Heights, about the further we get from certain moments in history, by seeing a movie like Liberty Heights, we can try to at least get into the mindset of what was happening in the 1950s, what was happening during the Crown Heights riots. Again, I think that's the power of film. It allows us to engage with very particular moments in time and again, create that dialogue.
Hello, Warren. One of my favorite films on in this subject is Rod Steiger's The Pawnbroker. How would you rate the impact of that film in relation to what we've seen tonight in the clips?
The Pawnbroker is an interesting film. I mean, for me, that's predominantly a film about the Holocaust and one man's very, very sort of traumatic encounter having escaped the Holocaust and what happened to his family. But you're right, there are connections between Blacks and Jews in that film, and there's so much going on. It's sort of hard to condense it into sort of one moment. But the Jewish figure becomes sort of like this Christ-like figure in that film, and it's, again, I think it puts Blacks and Jews together in a very particular moment in time. But for me, it's more, I always read that film more about the Holocaust than anything else.
Warren, you have given us so much to think about and to talk about during this program. We'd like you to leave us with some final thoughts. What would you like us to take away from what we've seen and heard in this program?
Well, I think tonight we've seen a lot of similarities and differences between these communities. But for me, it's with Anna Deavere Smith's work that I think is most important, that rather than focusing on monolithic differences between these groups, it's about focusing on the individual, on the person. And I think if a conversation, if a dialogue is really going to take place between these groups, it's about talking to each other one-on-one and really listening to the individual. So for me, that's a really good place to begin.
Well, Warren Hoffman, you have given us just so much wonderful insight throughout this program. We want to thank you, and we also want to thank our wonderful studio audience. They asked some terrific questions, and I think that really helped us to explore this subject matter even further. Of course, we want to thank Temple Shalom, Rabbi Rigler, for being so gracious in hosting us and for providing an opportunity not only for the congregation but for the community at large to look into these very, very important issues. We'd love to invite you to follow along with us at Humanities on the Road. If you'd like more information on what we're up to, where we're going, what we're learning along the way, we would invite you to check out the website at humanitiesontheroad.org. It's a great way to really continue the discussions that we've started in these programs and also to check out some bonus material that you'll find there. So we would encourage you to check out that website. Once again, it is humanitiesontheroad.org. Once again, this program is an opportunity for audiences all across the state to really learn new things, to look into the arts and history and all the important ideas that we're talking about these days. So we thank you for joining us. I'm Tracy Matisak. We'll see you next time.
Take a step on the road to fun. Take a step on the road into nature.
We thought he was a good owl to help us think like an owl.
Take a step on the road into the past.
Camp William Penn was established in the summer of 1863 as Confederate troops moved into Pennsylvania.
Take a step on the road to sharing powerful stories.
We walk in their footsteps, but we don't have to wear their shoes. We give thanks for what they gave us, freedom to live and choose.
Take a step on the road to experiencing big ideas.
But underneath it all, I think there's this grand epic, and Dvorak was part of this incredible saga.
Take a step with Humanities on the Road as speakers from the Pennsylvania Humanities Council take you on a journey through history, literature, the arts, and the world around you. Learn more about Humanities on the Road and discover why the humanities are important to you at humanitiesontheroad.org.